Good afternoon, or good evening, because I'll be sending this to you a little bit late. Um, this is our first flipped presentation for the year. It's on pages 1 through 11. There's not very much here, so if you get half a page of notes, you'll be lucky to have that happen. And so we're going to look at a couple broad problems, a couple more specifics, and then when you read tomorrow night and for this weekend, and we will have to read this weekend because we lose Friday, you will be delving into much more substantial data. Now let's look at a couple of the broad problems. Here we see, and by the way, normally you would see me in the right-hand corner, but I'm at home, not really set up to record the way I would on the big machine at work. So today you're just going to get my voice. You see the girls in the front of this picture. Well, you could probably accuse me of putting eye candy in, but more or less I want to get something about the American flag, and these girls kind of, in a way, represent the problem. We could say that if we were looking at voting patterns and voting turnout, girl 1, 2, 3, and 4, they participate. 5, 6, and 7, maybe even 8 is registered but don't vote, and the others aren't even registered at all. We're at about half of all eligible voters are not registered at all. And what that means is you are 18 and older. So we have a problem. We know that politics and government matter because you guys use government services every day. Politics and government matter not only domestically, but also, in a sense, because we're the world's policemen, it certainly has a great deal of importance on the foreign scene. But the problem is, here we are, the world's greatest democracy, the world's oldest democracy, has a voting electorate that is apathetic about politics and government and frequently knows very little about it. They know more about what Kim Kardashian wore last night than they knew who the vice president, who their senators, who their House member is. And that's a very sad commentary on the shallowness of the American electorate. Those who are least likely to be informed are those 25 and younger. They're less informed, they're less participatory, and it may only be at a point in their life when they begin to acquire things that they begin to become politically engaged. And even then, large numbers never become or never participate in the system. This graph shows you what has happened. Now this is college students, so we probably say the ages of 18 to 25. And we can see that in 1966, in the midterms, almost 60% of all college students voted. By the time we get to the midterms of 2002 and the election of 2000, we're now looking at about half that number participating in the process. And basically 70% saying, I got better things to do. And then when we look at this graph, this is, let's say somebody you don't know comes up and asks you a series of questions. And in this case, they asked 8 questions in 1964 and 9 questions in 2000. And you can see here that the respondents were given credit for knowing that Goldwater was from Arizona, Johnson from Texas, Goldwater and Johnson were Protestants, etc., etc. By the time 2000 arrives, the number who are able to make the correct answer to the questions has basically been cut in half for those who are 18 to 29. And though it is less for those who are 65 and older, the the fall off of achievement is maybe a 15 to 20% rather than 50%. So we don't know as much as we used to. And here we are in an age in which at your fingertip, at a keystroke, you have more information than any generation who has come before you. Then we see here the turnout rates by age. We can see that over 65 has actually increased their turnout. Now this isn't a percentage of turnout. This is the number of the percentage of 65-year-olds who turn out based on all those who are 65 and older. And this is the number of 25-year-olds who turn out based on those who are 25 and younger. And we can see that it's been a long slide downhill. Now, our first kind of solid data. The definition of government. The institutions and processes through which public policies are made for society. And this leads to two questions. And these are rather basic questions. How should we govern? And then what should government do? And what we mean basically is what kind of programs should the government pursue or not pursue? We don't know exactly what it means. It's a very broad question, but it certainly is a very valid question as to what government should do. And there's four key institutions that make policy at the national level: Congress, the President, the courts, and the federal administrative agencies, commonly known as bureaucracies. And the question is, how should they govern, and what should they do? So we know that all governments, and this is in essence the last slide, because this actually covers up through page 11, we have to ask ourselves, what do governments do? Because regardless of how they assume power, all governments have certain functions in common, whether you're communist, whether you're socialist, whether you're capitalistic, whether you're democratic. Governments maintain national defense. So for instance, the North Koreans have a million-man army standing ready to repel any invaders if that rather unlikely occurrence would occur. The government provides public goods, things that everybody shares: clean air, clean water. The government also has police power, not only internal police power through entities like the National Guard, but certainly with the Navy, an Army, an Air Force, and the Marines, which are part of the Navy. We have acted as the world's policemen since the end of World War II. So internally, we have acted that way. Externally, we have acted that way. Other nations also do the same thing. So for instance, in 1989, the Chinese government clamped down on the demonstrators in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. In 2001 or 2002, the American government clamped down on demonstrators at the G8 conference in Seattle. And then 2 years later, when the same demonstrators showed up at one of the European capitals and did the same thing, that government responded in kind. When a terrorist launched a terrorist attack in London in 2005, the national government in Britain clamped down throughout the country and went into alert mode. And that's, again, typical of all countries. Governments try to socialize the young. You walk in the morning, in third period, and you're more often than not asked to pledge allegiance to the flag. And within those words are words that are developed and written in order to enforce the culture and the broad ideals that Americans believe in. And finally, all governments collect the dreaded tax. It could be income tax, it could be excise tax, it could be value added tax. Governments are involved in a number of taxes. Those taxes pay for things that we just discussed, and at the same time, taxes can engage in income transfers to address inequalities in society. But these are the broad things that all governments, no matter what type of government they are, engage in. So in our next flip lesson, we will be looking at politics and democracy and the types of ideological systems that kind of dominate political thought in the U.S. That will be tomorrow night. I know you can't wait, either can I. So we'll see you tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon in class. Have a nice evening, and you'll be able to find this on YouTube. I will be sending around an email shortly to give you the address. Good night.